Listen here, you ghetto trash! This ain't your neighborhood courthouse where you people make demands. Tank Morrison's voice booms through the marble halls, his massive frame towering over the small black woman in her cheap second-hand suit. Behind him, a wall of white police officers sneer down at her like she's garbage. "Officer Morrison," Sarah's voice cuts sharp and clear. "My brother deserved justice." "Your brother?" Tank's laugh cuts like a blade. "That drug-dealing piece of trash got exactly what his kind deserves." He steps closer, his spit hitting her face as he speaks. "Maybe if welfare queens like your mama raised kids instead of criminals, we wouldn't have to clean up your messes." Tank deliberately knocks her legal papers to the floor, then grinds his boot into a photo of Marcus's dead body. "Know your place, girl. This is a white man's courtroom." The uniformed cops behind him chuckle and nod approvingly. Sarah stands alone, defiant, unbroken. What Tank doesn't know is about to destroy him completely. The Metropolitan Courthouse stands like a fortress of marble and glass in downtown's heart. News vans line the street like metal predators, their satellite dishes reaching toward storm clouds gathering overhead. Today's hearing will decide the fate of the Marcus Williams Police Reform Act, legislation that could change everything. Inside the ornate courtroom, century-old oak paneling witnesses a modern battle. The gallery splits cleanly down the middle like a wedding gone wrong. On one side, police uniforms create a blue wall of solidarity. On the other hand, community activists clutch handmade signs reading "Justice for Marcus" and "Stop Police Violence." Sarah Williams sits quietly in the front row, her modest navy suit a stark contrast to the expensive legal teams surrounding her. At 32, she carries herself with quiet dignity that masks inner steel forged in tragedy. Her colleagues in Parliament know her as the soft-spoken freshman representative who worked 3 jobs through law school. What they don't know could fill a martial arts trophy case. 3 years ago, Sarah discovered her hidden strength in the most painful way possible. After Marcus died, grief nearly destroyed her. The official report called it suicide, but Sarah knew better. Her 19-year-old brother had defensive wounds the coroner couldn't explain. Security cameras mysteriously malfunctioned during his final hours. The supervising officer filed a report so clean it squeaked. That officer was Bradley "Tank" Morrison. Sarah channeled her rage into something productive. Every morning at 5 a.m., she trained at Master Carter's dojo, learning Krav Maga with religious devotion. Every evening, she studied law books and police procedures until her eyes burned. She built herself into a weapon disguised as a grieving sister. Tank Morrison commands the opposite side of the courtroom like a general reviewing troops. 15 years of police work carved his face into permanent skepticism. At 42, he stands 6'4" with shoulders that strain his dress uniform. Commendations cover his chest like armor plating, each one representing a case closed, a problem solved, a threat neutralized. To Tank, today's hearing represents an invasion. Community activists and bleeding-heart politicians want to tear down everything he's built. They don't understand street reality. They've never faced a knife-wielding drug dealer or talked a jumper off a bridge. They see police brutality where Tank sees necessary force. Marcus Williams was a necessary force. The kid was dealing drugs, had connections to suppliers who paid Tank handsomely to look the other way. When Marcus threatened to expose the operation, Tank made a choice. One dead criminal versus dozens of good cops feeding their families. The math was simple. Tank doesn't know that Sarah Williams is more than Marcus's grieving sister. He sees her as just another community organizer with a law degree and naive dreams of justice. Her plainclothes and quiet demeanor reinforce his assumptions. Politicians wear expensive suits and demand attention. This woman fades into the background like wallpaper. Judge Patricia Williams, no relation to Sarah, presides with 20 years of hard-earned authority. She lost her own nephew to police violence 5 years ago, a fact carefully hidden from Tank's research team. Her black robes carry the weight of personal understanding that makes her dangerous to Tank's cause. The media fills every available seat, their cameras hungry for drama. Conservative outlets want footage of naive activists being schooled by experienced officers. Liberal networks hope for evidence of police brutality they can broadcast for weeks. None of them realize they're about to witness something unprecedented. Sarah's mentor, retired Judge Martinez, watches from the back row via video call on Sarah's phone, propped discreetly against her briefcase. His weathered face shows concern mixed with pride. He trained Sarah in courtroom strategy the same way Master Carter trained her in combat, with patience, precision, and absolute commitment to justice. Tank's police union representative Dave Fletcher whispers last-minute strategy changes. The union spent serious money fighting this legislation. Too much rides on today's outcome to leave anything to chance. Fletcher doesn't notice Sarah's presence any more than Tank does. She's background noise in their symphony of power. The afternoon light streaming through stained glass windows paints the courtroom in amber and shadow. In a few hours, this sacred space will witness an explosion that changes everything. Two forces shaped by the same tragedy are about to collide with devastating consequences. But first, Tank Morrison needs to learn exactly who he's been underestimating. The first blow comes during afternoon recess. Tank Morrison holds court in the marble lobby, surrounded by reporters like a king addressing subjects. His voice booms off the high ceiling, every word calculated to demolish Sarah's credibility. "This little girl thinks she can lecture us about police work?" Tank's laugh carries across the crowded space. "I've been protecting this city since before she could spell justice. Some community activists want to teach real cops how to do their jobs?" Sarah stands 30 feet away, organizing documents at a side table. Tank's words hit like physical blows, but she keeps her face neutral. Around her, reporters scribble notes and cameras roll. Tank notices her listening and raises his voice. "Maybe if some families raised law-abiding citizens instead of criminals, we wouldn't need these witch hunts from bleeding-heart troublemakers." The words hang like poison gas. Sarah's hands freeze on her papers. Tank just mocked Marcus's death without knowing she's his sister. The cruelty is breathtaking. "Officer Morrison?" Sarah's voice cuts through crowd noise, steady despite fury building in her chest. "I look forward to reviewing the evidence together, including the Marcus Williams case." Tank's confident smile doesn't waver. To him, she's just another activist who reads news articles and thinks she understands police work. "Sure thing, sweetheart. Always happy to educate concerned citizens." The crowd of reporters senses tension and edges closer. Tank notices their attention and decides to put on a show. He approaches Sarah's table with theatrical casualness, his massive frame casting shadows across her workspace. "Maybe stick to paperwork you can handle," Tank says, then deliberately bumps her table. Sarah's carefully organized documents scatter across the marble floor like autumn leaves. Marcus's autopsy photos slide under nearby benches. "Clumsy me," Tank smirks, stepping on a crime scene photograph. The image shows Marcus's bruised body, and Tank's boot heel grinds across her brother's face. Sarah's hands tremble as she retrieves the damaged photo. Those watching closely see her jaw tighten, the only outward sign of volcanic rage building inside. Tank has no idea he just declared war on the wrong person. Tank Morrison's confidence grows with each passing hour. To him, Sarah Williams represents everything wrong with modern America. Soft activists who never faced real danger trying to regulate warriors who risk their lives daily. He decides to make her the poster child for naive idealism. During the next break, Tank grants an impromptu interview to Channel 7 News right outside the courtroom doors. His voice carries clearly to where Sarah sits reviewing testimony transcripts. "Look, I feel for grieving families, I really do," Tank says, his tone dripping with false sympathy. "But emotion can't drive policy. This community organizer never walked a beat, never faced a knife-wielding suspect, never made split-second decisions that saved lives. It's easy to criticize from ivory towers." The reporter nods sympathetically. "What's your response to allegations about the Marcus Williams case?" Tank's expression hardens. "Marcus Williams was a drug dealer who made violent choices, period. His sister here wants to canonize a criminal because she can't accept reality. We see this pattern constantly, families refusing to acknowledge their loved one's behavior." Sarah's pen snaps in her grip. Tank just called Marcus a violent criminal on live television, spreading lies about her dead brother to justify murder. The reporter doesn't know Tank is talking about the woman sitting 20 feet away. "Some people," Tank continues, "use tragedy to push political agendas. They organize protests, file lawsuits, create legislation based on emotion rather than facts. It's a dangerous precedent when activists can second-guess police decisions from their comfortable offices." The interview continues for 12 minutes. Tank systematically destroys Marcus's reputation while painting Sarah as a delusional sister who can't handle the truth. He describes Marcus as a habitual offender with violent tendencies, and Sarah as a community college graduate playing lawyer. When the cameras stop rolling, Tank notices Sarah's intense stare. Instead of feeling intimidated, he approaches her table with swagger. "Enjoying the show, counselor?" Tank's voice carries just enough volume for nearby lawyers to hear. "Sometimes truth hurts, but that's reality in police work." Sarah looks up from her broken pen. "Officer Morrison, were you personally involved in Marcus Williams' arrest and detention?" "I was the supervising officer, yes. Standard procedure." Tank's chest puffs with pride. "I handled everything by the book. Your brother's choices led to his consequences." "Interesting," Sarah says quietly. "The official report lists you as present during his final hours." Tank's confidence doesn't waver. This naive activist thinks she found something suspicious, but Tank covered his tracks perfectly. "Death investigations require thorough documentation. I filed comprehensive reports." "I'm sure you did." Sarah's voice carries undertones Tank can't interpret. "Very thorough." The afternoon session brings new humiliations. When Sarah attempts to present evidence about police misconduct patterns, Tank stage whispers to his union representative loud enough for microphones to catch. "Here we go with the conspiracy theories." When Sarah questions the coroner's timeline in Marcus's case, Tank shakes his head theatrically and mutters, "Amateur hour." Judge Williams pounds her gavel. "Officer Morrison, please maintain courtroom decorum." "Sorry, Your Honor," Tank replies with exaggerated contrition. "Sometimes it's hard to listen to fantasy presented as fact." The gallery of police officers chuckles approvingly. Tank feeds off their energy like a performer working a friendly crowd. Each disruption makes Sarah appear weak and Tank appear authoritative. During cross-examination, Tank's arrogance reaches new heights. When Sarah's attorney asks about security camera malfunctions during Marcus's detention, Tank responds with condescending patience. "Technology fails sometimes. It's unfortunate, but not suspicious. We can't prevent every equipment problem." "How convenient," the attorney responds. Tank's mask slips slightly. "Are you suggesting something improper occurred? Because I resent the implication. I've served this city with honor for 15 years. Sarah watches from her seat, taking mental notes. Tank reveals crucial information when angry. His defensiveness confirms her suspicions about the camera sabotage. During the final break, Tank's behavior escalates to pure cruelty. He approaches Sarah's table where she's reviewing Marcus's medical examiner photos, images of her brother's battered body. "Still playing detective?" Tank looms over her, his shadow falling across the photographs. "Some cases don't have happy endings, sweetheart. Your brother chose his path." Sarah doesn't respond, carefully organizing the evidence of Tank's handiwork. Marcus's bruised face stares up from the photos, silent testimony to Tank's violence. "You know what I see here?" Tank picks up one of the autopsy photos without permission. "I see a young man who made bad decisions and faced consequences. Nothing more, nothing less." The photo shows defensive wounds on Marcus's hands, evidence of a struggle Tank claimed never happened. Sarah's breathing remains controlled, but her hands clench into fists beneath the table. Tank notices her reaction and pushes harder. "Face reality. Your brother wasn't some innocent angel. He was dealing drugs, associating with dangerous people, and threatening police operations. What did you expect would happen?" The words confirm Sarah's worst suspicions. Tank just admitted Marcus threatened police operations. Corruption Sarah suspected but couldn't prove. Tank's arrogance is making him sloppy. "Maybe," Tank continues, "instead of wasting taxpayer money on witch hunts, you should ask yourself where your family went wrong. How did you fail Marcus so completely that he ended up dead in a cell?" Sarah looks up slowly, her dark eyes meeting Tank's blue ones. For the first time, he sees something that makes him pause, not grief or anger, but calculation. The look of a predator sizing up prey. "Officer Morrison," Sarah says quietly, "I think you've said enough." Tank mistakes her restraint for weakness. "Have I? Because from where I stand, you're just another activist who can't handle the truth. Your brother was a criminal who died because criminals make dangerous choices." He leans closer, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. and little activists who play with real police work might learn the same lesson. Sarah's expression doesn't change, but everyone nearby feels the temperature drop. Tank just threatened her, and the courthouse cameras caught every word. He has no idea the trap he's walking into. Sarah Williams excuses herself from the courtroom as Tank basks in applause from his supporters. The marble hallway echoes with her footsteps as she walks toward the women's restroom, her composure finally cracking. Inside the empty bathroom, Sarah grips the porcelain sink and stares at her reflection. Tank's words replay in her mind like poison. Your brother was a criminal who died because criminals make dangerous choices. Her phone buzzes. Judge Martinez's weathered face appears on the video call, concern etched in every line. Sarah, I watched the live stream. He's trying to provoke you into losing control. He threatened me, Judge, on camera. Sarah's voice trembles with controlled fury. And he just admitted Marcus threatened police operations. He's confessing without realizing it. Martinez nods slowly. Tank's arrogance is his weakness. He thinks you're just a grieving sister with a law degree. He has no idea who he's really facing. Sarah takes a deep breath, centering herself using techniques Master Carter taught her. He doesn't know I'm an MP. When I reveal that, he'll either back down or explode, Martinez finishes. Based on what I've seen, Tank Morrison doesn't back down from anyone. Sarah adjusts her posture in the mirror. For the first time today, observers would notice something different, the way she holds her shoulders, the steadiness in her stance. The grieving sister is disappearing, replaced by something far more dangerous. Time to show Tank Morrison exactly who he's been underestimating. The afternoon sun casts long shadows across the courtroom as Judge Williams calls for final statements. Tank Morrison approaches the podium with the swagger of a man who's never lost a fight. Behind him, dozens of uniformed officers sit like a blue wall of solidarity. Your Honor, Tank begins, his voice carrying the authority of 15 years in uniform. We've heard a lot of emotional appeals today. Tragic stories designed to tug heartstrings rather than address facts. He turns slightly, making sure the cameras capture his profile. But policy can't be driven by the grief of community activists who've never walked in our shoes. Sarah sits in the front row, her hands folded calmly in her lap. To everyone watching, she appears to be just another concerned citizen listening to testimony. Tank's eyes sweep past her dismissively. The Marcus Williams case represents everything wrong with this misguided legislation, Tank continues, his confidence growing with each word. A young man made criminal choices, faced consequences, and now his family wants to blame the police for their own failures. Murmurs ripple through the gallery. Some nod in agreement, others shift uncomfortably. Tank feeds off the mixed reaction like a politician working a crowd. I supervised Marcus Williams' detention personally. Everything was handled by protocol. The investigation was thorough, professional, and conclusive. Suicide by hanging, a tragic end to a criminal life. Sarah's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly. Tank just lied under oath about Marcus's death, claiming suicide when he knows he committed murder. Tank's voice rises with righteous indignation. But instead of accepting the painful truth, we have community organizers playing detective. People with no law enforcement training, no understanding of street realities, trying to second-guess split-second decisions made by trained professionals. He pauses dramatically, letting his words sink in. Your Honor, I've dedicated my life to protecting this city. I've faced knife-wielding suspects, talked jumpers off bridges, cleaned up after drug dealers like Marcus Williams. I won't apologize for doing my job. The police officers behind him nod approvingly. Tank basks in their support, his chest swelling with pride. This legislation isn't about reform, it's about revenge. It's about activists who can't handle reality trying to criminalize police work. Well, I have news for them. Tank's voice hardens as he stares directly at Sarah. Real police work isn't pretty. It's not politically correct. Sometimes criminals die because criminals make dangerous choices. That's not police brutality. That's justice. Sarah stands slowly, her movement deliberate and controlled. The courtroom falls silent as she walks toward the podium. Tank watches her approach with amusement, thinking she's about to make some emotional plea about her community concerns. Your Honor, Sarah's voice cuts through the silence like a blade. I'd like to respond to Officer Morrison's statements. Judge Williams nods. You may approach. Sarah stops 3 feet from Tank, looking up at his towering frame. He smirks down at her, confident in his physical and institutional superiority. "Officer Morrison," Sarah says clearly, her voice carrying to every corner of the courtroom, "you've spent considerable time today dismissing community activists and family members seeking justice." Tank's smirk widens. "Just stating facts, ma'am." "I appreciate your dedication to facts," Sarah continues, her tone remaining perfectly professional. "So let me share one with you." The courtroom holds its breath. Something in Sarah's tone suggests this moment matters more than anyone realizes. Sarah looks directly into Tank's eyes. "I am Member of Parliament Sarah Williams, Chairwoman of the Police Oversight Committee, and Marcus Williams was my brother." The words hit the courtroom like a physical explosion. Tank's face drains of color as the full weight of his situation crashes down on him. He spent hours publicly insulting, threatening, and humiliating a sitting member of Parliament on live television. The police officers behind him look horrified. Union Representative Dave Fletcher's mouth falls open. Reporters frantically scribble notes as cameras capture Tank's shock. Tank's voice cracks like a teenager's. "You're an MP?" "Yes," Sarah replies calmly. "And for the record, I graduated summa cum laude from Harvard Law School, not community college. I've walked plenty of beats during my community organizing days, and Marcus Williams was murdered in your custody." Tank's shock transforms into rage. His humiliation in front of his peers, combined with the realization that he's been outmaneuvered by someone he considered beneath him, ignites something primal and dangerous. "I don't care if you're the Queen of England!" Tank's voice booms across the courtroom. "Your drug-dealing brother got exactly what criminals deserve." The gallery erupts. Judge Williams pounds her gavel repeatedly. "Order! Order in my courtroom!" But the Tank has lost all control. 3 years of successfully covering up Marcus's murder, combined with the shock of discovering Sarah's true identity, breaks something fundamental in his psyche. "You think your fancy title protects you?" Tank advances on Sarah, his massive frame towering over her small figure. "You're still just another activist bitch who—" Tank's hand moves in a vicious backhand aimed at Sarah's face. The slap echoes through the silent courtroom like a gunshot, the sound captured perfectly by dozens of recording devices. Sarah's head snaps to the side from the impact, but she doesn't fall. Instead, she absorbs the blow and moves with deadly precision honed by 3 years of grief-fueled training. Time slows to syrup as Sarah sidesteps Tank's follow-up grab. Her right hand shoots out in a perfect palm strike to his solar plexus, driving every molecule of air from his lungs. As Tank doubles over, gasping, Sarah's elbow comes down in a controlled strike to the back of his neck. Tank Morrison, all 6'4" and 240 pounds of him, drops like a felled tree. His head strikes the marble floor with a sickening crack that echoes through the stunned courtroom. The entire sequence takes exactly 3.2 seconds. Sarah stands over Tank's unconscious form, her breathing controlled and steady. Blood trickles from her split lip where his slap connected, but her expression remains calm. "Self-defense," she states clearly for the record, her voice carrying to every microphone in the room. "And I am a member of Parliament." The courtroom explodes into chaos. Police officers surge forward, stopped by bailiffs. Reporters shout questions while cameras capture everything. Judge Williams pounds her gavel uselessly as Tank's unconscious form sprawls across the courthouse floor. Within minutes, cell phone footage floods social media. #MPF Fights Back begins trending as the world watches a member of Parliament knock out the cop who killed her brother. Tank Morrison finally learned who he was really dealing with. The courthouse steps erupt into chaos as news crews broadcast Sarah's takedown of Tank Morrison to the world. Within an hour, #MPF Fights Back trends globally while Tank recovers in the hospital with a concussion and wounded pride. Police Union President Dave Fletcher calls an emergency press conference that evening. Standing before a wall of blue uniforms, his face red with indignation, he delivers a scathing condemnation. "Today we witnessed an unconscionable abuse of power," Fletcher declares. "A sitting member of Parliament used her martial arts training to assault a decorated police officer in a court of law. This wasn't self-defense. This was a calculated attack by someone who concealed her identity and training to entrap Officer Morrison." The assembled officers nod grimly as Fletcher continues his carefully crafted narrative. Sarah Williams deliberately hid her MP status, allowing Officer Morrison to treat her as he would any other activist. She manipulated the situation to provoke a response, then used lethal force against an unsuspecting officer. Conservative media outlets seize the story immediately. Headlines scream across television screens, MP's secret weapon. Did Sarah Williams plan the attack? And when politicians go rogue, the Sarah Williams scandal. By morning, Tank appears on 3 major news programs, sporting a neck brace and speaking in carefully modulated tones of injured dignity. I had no idea she was an MP, Tank tells sympathetic hosts. She presented herself as a community activist. If I'd known her true position, I would never have engaged so directly. She used her concealed identity to manipulate me into a confrontation. Tank's performance is masterful. He portrays himself as a working-class cop, blindsided by a deceptive politician. I've spent 15 years protecting this community. I don't deserve to be ambushed by someone hiding behind false pretenses. The narrative gains traction across social media. #TankWasTrapped competes with #MPFightsBack as public opinion fractures along predictable lines. Conservative voices condemn Sarah's abuse of political privilege, while progressive supporters celebrate her courage. District Attorney Patricia Hawkins, facing massive pressure from police unions and conservative voters, announces formal charges against Sarah within 48 hours. No one is above the law, especially elected officials, Hawkins declares at her own press conference. Using concealed martial arts training to assault a police officer represents an abuse of power that cannot be tolerated in a civilized society. The charges are severe: aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, specifically citing Sarah's hands as weapons due to her martial arts expertise. If convicted, she faces up to 10 years in prison and automatic removal from Parliament. Sarah's legal team fragments under pressure. Senior advisors urge a plea deal that would involve resigning from Parliament and accepting probation. Cut your losses, they counsel. This story isn't going away, but Sarah refuses to back down. I defended myself against my brother's killer, she tells her remaining supporters. I won't apologize for that, and I won't let Tank Morrison escape justice again. Tank's confidence soars as the legal machinery grinds forward. He gives increasingly bold interviews, painting himself as the victim of political persecution. Sarah Williams used her position to deceive and attack me, Tank tells a sympathetic podcast host. She's not some brave hero. She's a politician who abused her power for personal revenge. What Tank doesn't realize is that his growing media presence attracts unwanted attention. FBI domestic terrorism investigators, already monitoring police violence cases, take notice when a sitting member of Parliament gets charged with assaulting an officer. Agent Maria Santos begins reviewing the Marcus Williams case with fresh eyes, wondering why a grieving sister would risk everything to attack one specific cop. Her investigation uncovers discrepancies Tank thought he'd buried forever. The enhanced courthouse audio footage proves devastating for Tank's narrative. FBI technicians isolate his whispered threats to Sarah. Little activists who play with real police work might learn the same lesson. Even worse, they capture his admission about Marcus. Your brother threatened police operations. What did you expect would happen? Sarah's defense team, led by civil rights attorney Michael Carter, uses Tank's own words against him. Officer Morrison admitted Marcus Williams threatened to expose police corruption, Carter argues in pretrial motions. This suggests Marcus wasn't killed during a routine arrest. He was murdered to protect criminal activity. Tank's lawyers scramble to explain their client's statements. Officer Morrison was speaking hypothetically about criminal behavior patterns, they claim. His words were taken out of context by hostile investigators. But the damage spreads beyond Tank's credibility. Federal prosecutors announced they're reopening the Marcus Williams case based on new evidence suggesting federal civil rights violations. Tank's union support begins wavering as the federal investigation expands. Other officers worry about their own exposure if Tank's corruption network unravels. Union President Fletcher privately advises Tank to consider a plea deal. The feds are serious this time, Fletcher warns. Your assault case is bringing attention we can't control. Tank refuses to back down. I've covered my tracks perfectly. Sarah Williams attacked me, period. The feds will find nothing because there's nothing to find. His arrogance blinds him to the growing evidence mountain. Federal investigators traced Tank's financial records, finding unexplained deposits totaling $50,000 in the months before Marcus's death. Phone records show communications with known drug dealers Marcus was preparing to expose. Sarah watches the investigation unfold from her Parliament office, suspended from committee duties pending trial. Public opinion remains split, but she finds strength in knowing the truth is finally emerging. Her mentor, Judge Martinez, visits weekly, offering support and strategic advice. Tank's pride will be his downfall, Martinez predicts. He can't resist defending himself publicly, and every interview gives prosecutors more ammunition. The breakthrough comes when federal agents interview Marcus's former cellmate, Rico Vasquez, now in protective custody. Rico reveals that Marcus had documented Tank's corruption network extensively, hiding evidence in a location only Sarah would recognize. Marcus said if anything happened to him, his sister would know where to look, Rico tells investigators. He was scared of that big cop and said the guy had killed people before. Armed with Rico's testimony, FBI agents search Marcus's childhood bedroom in Sarah's apartment. Hidden inside their father's old Bible, they find Marcus's insurance policy, photographs of Tank accepting bribes, recorded conversations, and a detailed journal documenting the corruption network. Marcus's final entry chills everyone who reads it. Tank knows I'm going to expose him. If something happens to me, it wasn't suicide. Tell Sarah I'm sorry I got involved with these people. Tank's carefully constructed narrative collapses as federal prosecutors prepare murder charges. His assault case against Sarah becomes secondary to his own survival, but Tank Morrison has one more card to play, and he's desperate enough to use it. The federal courthouse buzzes with international media as Tank Morrison's murder trial begins. Sarah's assault case has been postponed pending the outcome of federal charges, transforming her from defendant to key witness in Tank's prosecution. Tank enters the courtroom flanked by expensive lawyers, his neck brace removed but his confidence shattered. Federal prosecutors have built an overwhelming case. Financial records, witness testimony, and Marcus's hidden evidence all point to premeditated murder. Lead prosecutor Janet Rodriguez addresses the packed courtroom with devastating precision. Marcus Williams died because he threatened to expose a corruption network led by Officer Morrison. This wasn't police work, it was assassination. Tank's defense attorney, Harold Brennan, attempts damage control. My client is a decorated officer who made split-second decisions in dangerous situations. Marcus Williams was a violent drug dealer who attacked Officer Morrison during routine detention, but Tank's own arrogance undermines his defense. Despite Brennan's advice to remain silent, Tank insists on testifying. He can't resist the opportunity to publicly justify his actions and attack Sarah's credibility. Your Honor, Tank declares as he takes the stand, I've served this community with honor for 15 years. Marcus Williams was the criminal who chose violence over compliance. Prosecutor Rodriguez begins her cross-examination with surgical precision. Officer Morrison, you were personally present during Marcus Williams's final hours, correct? Yes, as a supervising officer. Standard procedure. How many other inmates died in your custody during your 15-year career? Tank's lawyer objects, but the judge allows the question. The Tank shifts uncomfortably. Death in custody is rare but not unprecedented. Criminals sometimes make desperate choices. Rodriguez produces a thick file. Actually, 7 inmates died during the detentions you supervised. That's statistically impossible unless you're either extraordinarily unlucky or something else is happening. The Tank's composure cracks slightly. I work in dangerous situations. Sometimes things go wrong. Let's focus on Marcus Williams specifically. You testified that security cameras malfunctioned during his detention. How convenient was that timing? Technology fails. It's unfortunate but not suspicious. Rodriguez plays enhanced audio from the courthouse confrontation. Tank's voice fills the courtroom. Your brother threatened police operations. What did you expect would happen? Tank's face goes pale as his own words condemn him. I was speaking hypothetically about criminal behavior patterns. Were you? Because this sounds like specific knowledge of Marcus Williams's activities. What operations did he threaten, Officer Morrison? Tank realizes his mistake too late. Admitting knowledge of specific operations implicates him in corruption. Denying it makes his previous statements look like confessions. I don't recall specific details. Tank mumbles. Rodriguez produces Marcus's hidden journal, entered as evidence despite Tank's lawyer's objections. Marcus Williams documented your corruption network extensively. He recorded conversations, photographed bribe exchanges, and identified your criminal associates. Tank's breathing becomes labored as his carefully buried secrets surface in federal court. Those could be fabricated. Dead men can't verify authenticity. Actually, Marcus hid physical evidence that corroborates his documentation. FBI forensics confirmed these photographs show you accepting $50,000 from drug dealer Carlos Mendoza. The courtroom gasps as blown-up photographs flash on screens. Tank accepting cash bundles, Tank meeting with known criminals, Tank coordinating with corrupt officers. Marcus had documented everything. Tank explodes from the witness stand, his 15 years of careful control disintegrating. That little punk was going to destroy everything. He was going to snitch about operations that kept this city safe. The outburst stuns everyone. Tank just confessed to murder on live television, broadcast to millions watching the trial. Brennan frantically motions for his client to stop talking, but Tank has completely lost control. "You want the truth!" Tank screams at the prosecutor. "Marcus Williams was a dead man the moment he threatened my network. I built something important, keeping real criminals off the streets while cleaning up their money. One dead snitch versus hundreds of lives saved." Judge Thompson pounds his gavel repeatedly. "Mr. Morrison, you need to—" "I protected this city for 15 years. Tank continues his manic confession. "I made hard choices that weak people couldn't understand. Sarah Williams set me up because she couldn't handle the reality about her criminal brother." Brennan physically tries to restrain his client, but Tank shoves him away. "Marcus got what traitors get, and that bitch MP manipulated me into attacking her so she could play victim." The courtroom erupts as Tank's complete psychological breakdown plays out on international television. His confession to murdering Marcus, combined with his continued threats against Sarah, destroys any remaining sympathy. Rodriguez watches calmly as Tank destroys himself. "Officer Morrison, are you confessing to murdering Marcus Williams?" Tank's wild eyes focus on her with manic intensity. "I'm confessing to protecting my city from criminals and politicians who don't understand necessary work. Did you strangle Marcus Williams with your bare hands?" "I neutralized a threat to law enforcement operations." The admission hangs in the air like a death sentence. Tank has just confessed to first-degree murder before millions of witnesses. His lawyers slump in defeat while prosecutors exchange satisfied glances. Judge Thompson calls for recess as bailiffs approach Tank, who continues ranting about justified killings and political conspiracies. His breakdown is complete in public, broadcast live to a horrified nation. Sarah watches from the gallery, finally hearing Tank admit to murdering Marcus. 3 years of investigation, grief, and martial arts training led to this moment. Her brother's killer just confessed in open court. During recess, Tank's remaining supporters abandon him. Police union officials distance themselves from his unstable behavior, while conservative media outlets quietly retract their support. FBI agent Santos interviews Sarah during the break. "Miss Williams, we're prepared to recommend dropping all charges against you. Officer Morrison's confession makes your assault case irrelevant." Sarah nods, but her expression remains grim. Justice for Marcus isn't just about Tank going to prison. It's about preventing this from happening to other families. When court resumes, Tank sits defeated and medicated, his lawyers having convinced him to remain silent, but the damage is irreversible. His televised confession will replay for years, becoming a textbook example of criminal arrogance destroying itself. Rodriguez presents closing arguments to a jury that's already decided. "Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard the defendant confess to murder in his own words. Marcus Williams died because he threatened to expose corruption. Officer Morrison killed him to protect criminal profits." Tank's defense offers no closing argument. How do you defend someone who confessed on live television? The jury deliberates for 37 minutes before returning with guilty verdicts on all counts: first-degree murder, civil rights violations, conspiracy, and racketeering. Tank Morrison, who spent 15 years believing himself untouchable, will spend the rest of his life in federal prison. The courthouse steps shimmer in golden afternoon light as Sarah Williams emerges to thunderous applause. After Tank's conviction on all charges, federal prosecutors officially dropped her assault case, declaring her actions justified self-defense against a confessed murderer. The crowd of supporters has grown exponentially since Tank's televised breakdown. What started as a few dozen community activists now spans thousands, their signs reading "Justice for Marcus," "MP Fights Back," and "Sarah's our hero." International news crews broadcast live as Sarah approaches the microphone cluster. 3 years ago, my brother Marcus was murdered in police custody, Sarah begins, her voice carrying across the packed plaza. Today, his killer received life in prison without parole. The crowd erupts in cheers, but Sarah raises her hand for silence. This isn't just about Tank Morrison. It's about a system that protected him for 15 years while he terrorized our communities. Behind her, Marcus's photograph displays on a massive screen, young, smiling, innocent. The image transforms him from Tank's violent criminal narrative back into what he truly was, a teenager who died for threatening to expose corruption. Marcus Williams was 19 years old when Tank Morrison strangled him to death, Sarah continues, her voice steady despite tears streaming down her face. He died because he chose courage over cowardice, justice over profit. Federal Judge Thompson's sentencing echoed in every news broadcast that morning. Bradley Morrison, you have been found guilty of first-degree murder, civil rights violations, and racketeering. You will serve life imprisonment without possibility of parole. Tank had sat silent during sentencing, his arrogance finally broken. The man who terrorized Sarah for hours in that courtroom now looked like a frightened child facing consequences for the first time in his adult life. Sarah's political transformation proves equally dramatic. Her willingness to physically defend herself while maintaining moral authority reshapes her effectiveness in Parliament. Colleagues who once dismissed her as a quiet freshman now seek her guidance on justice reform. The Marcus Williams Police Reform Act passed Parliament with unanimous support just 6 weeks after Tank's conviction. Sarah's enhanced credibility, combined with Tank's public confession, makes opposition politically impossible. The legislation mandates federal oversight of police departments with suspicious custody death patterns, requires independent investigations of all detention fatalities, and establishes whistleblower protections for officers exposing corruption. Marcus died fighting corruption, Sarah tells the crowd. Today, his death saves other families from experiencing our pain. Tank's conviction triggers federal investigations in 12 other cities where his corruption network operated. 47 additional officers faced charges ranging from bribery to accessory to murder. The ripple effects spread far beyond one courthouse in one city. Sarah's office displays letters from families across the nation. Mothers thanking her for showing them that fighting back is possible. Fathers inspired to seek justice for their own murdered children. Siblings finding strength in her example. The viral video of Sarah's 3.2-second takedown of Tank accumulates over 200 million views across platforms. Martial arts schools report massive enrollment increases, particularly among women and marginalized communities. #DefendYourself becomes a global movement. Tank's former police union quietly establishes a victim compensation fund using his seized assets. The $2.3 million recovered from his corruption network provides counseling and legal support for families affected by police violence. Sarah visits Marcus's grave every Sunday, bringing updates on the legislation bearing his name. 47 cops arrested this month because of you, she whispers to his headstone. You're still fighting corruption, baby brother. The media circus gradually fades, but Sarah's transformation endures. She speaks at law enforcement academies about ethical policing, addresses international human rights conferences about systematic reform, and mentors young politicians facing intimidation. Her memoir, Fighting Back When Justice Requires Courage, becomes an international bestseller. Proceeds fund self-defense training for low-income communities and legal aid for families battling police misconduct. Tank's former supporters distance themselves completely. Police departments nationwide implement de-escalation training, partially inspired by avoiding another Tank Morrison incident. The viral courthouse video becomes required viewing in police academies as an example of how prejudice and arrogance destroy careers. Sarah finds personal happiness too. She remarries a fellow parliamentarian who shares her passion for justice reform. They adopt two foster children whose biological parents died in police custody, giving them the stable home Marcus never had. On the third anniversary of Tank's conviction, Sarah addresses the National Police Reform Conference. "Justice isn't just about punishing wrongdoers," she concludes her keynote speech. "It's about transforming systems so future Marcus Williams can live full lives." The standing ovation lasts 7 minutes. In the audience, dozens of families touched by police violence find hope in Sarah's example. Marcus Williams's death, through his sister's courage, becomes a catalyst for protecting thousands of future victims. Tank Morrison destroyed himself trying to silence one grieving sister. Instead, he created a movement that will outlive them all. 2 years after Tank Morrison began serving life imprisonment, Sarah Williams stands in her Parliament office, surrounded by evidence of transformation. The walls display framed photographs from police reform graduations, letters from grateful families, and a prominent portrait of Marcus smiling in his high school cap and gown. The Marcus Williams Police Reform Act has exceeded every expectation. Federal oversight prevented 23 documented custody deaths in its first 18 months. 156 officers faced accountability measures they would have escaped under the old system. Sarah's desk holds thank you letters that arrive daily. Maria Santos from Phoenix writes, "Your courage inspired me to report corruption in my local department. 3 officers were arrested last month." James Carter from Seattle adds, "My son is alive because officers now wear body cameras during all detentions." The global impact spreads beyond American borders. The Sarah Williams model influences police reform in 12 countries. Her combination of political authority and personal courage creates a template for effective advocacy that politicians worldwide study. Tank Morrison remains in ADX Florence, the federal supermax prison. Prison reports describe him as a broken man who spends days in solitary confinement, all arrogance stripped away by life imprisonment reality. His former corruption network faces ongoing prosecutions. Federal investigations uncovered evidence linking Tank's operation to 17 murders spanning 8 years. The man who called Marcus a violent criminal was actually a criminal organization leader. Sarah's martial arts journey continues with Master Carter, who now teaches self-defense classes funded by her Victim Advocacy Foundation. Enrollment exploded after the viral courthouse video, with particular interest from women in politics and activism. The statistics paint a remarkable transformation picture. Self-defense class enrollment increased 340% among women in public service. Police complaint resolution improved 89% in departments under federal oversight. Social media engagement with police reform content rose 450%. Sarah's political evolution continues as she chairs the International Police Accountability Commission. Her office coordinates reform efforts across continents, sharing successful strategies and supporting advocates facing intimidation. Her personal life flourished alongside her public mission. Marriage to fellow MP David Kim brought stability and partnership. Their adopted children, Emma and Carlos, both lost parents to police violence, finding healing in a family that understands trauma and triumph. Marcus's Memorial Foundation operates community centers in 38 cities, providing free legal aid, counseling services, and self-defense training. Over 50,000 people received assistance in the program's first 2 years. Sarah visits Marcus's grave monthly, bringing updates on lives saved by legislation bearing his name. 12 more families got justice this month because you were brave enough to document Tank's crimes, she whispers to his headstone. The viral courthouse video remains the most watched police accountability footage in internet history. Frame-by-frame analysis is taught in law schools, martial arts academies, and conflict resolution programs as a masterclass in proportional self-defense. Sarah's story proves that standing up to bullies works, whether facing corrupt cops or systemic injustice. Her example shows that real power comes from courage, not titles, and sometimes peaceful people must be prepared to fight. Justice for Marcus became justice for everyone, and it started with one sister who refused to let her brother's killer walk free. Sarah Williams proved that sometimes the only way to honor the dead is to fight like hell for the living. This story shows us that power isn't about position, it's about courage. Sarah was a member of Parliament, but she was also a sister who refused to be intimidated by her brother's killer. Have you ever faced someone who thought they could silence you? Have you ever stood up to a bully who underestimated your strength? Share your story in the comments below. Your courage might inspire the next person to fight back. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Stories of justice and transformation need to be heard by everyone who's ever felt powerless against institutional corruption. Remember, you don't need a black belt to stand up for what's right, but having one doesn't hurt. Most importantly, never let anyone convince you that seeking justice makes you the problem. What would you have done in Sarah's position? Let us know in the comments and share this with someone who needs to remember that bullies can be defeated, no matter how big they are. The Marcus Williams Act continues saving lives today. Justice for one became justice for all.
The story you heard today wasn't cleaned up. It was told exactly as it happened. At Black Voices Uncut, we believe that's the only way truth can live. If you felt something, hit like, comment, and your reaction, and subscribe. Every week, we bring you voices that refuse to be silenced.
Touch that man and I'll make sure the whole world sees what you really do with your badges. Nia Coleman's voice cut through the night air as she stepped between the fallen Hell's Angel and Officer Denton's drawn weapon. Blood pooled on the asphalt. The biker's leather-clad body lay crumpled beside his mangled motorcycle outside Sweet Comfort Diner. Red and blue lights painted harsh shadows across the empty street. Back inside, Nia. This isn't your business. Denton's partner unclipped his taser, eyes darting to the security camera above Nia's door. Strange coincidence you found him right after that radio call. Nia pulled out her phone, camera recording. Almost like you were waiting. Behind her, the diner stood empty except for a college student in the corner booth, frantically typing on his phone. Her grandmother's diner, the last black-owned business on the block, now witness to something dangerous. He's a suspect. Denton stepped closer, coffee breath hot on her face. And you're one foreclosure away from homeless. Choose your next move carefully. The fallen biker groaned, eyes fluttering open. Blood matted his beard, his gaze locked on Nia, desperate, pleading. I'm choosing to be a witness. She didn't move. Whatever happens next, it happens on camera. The biker whispered something. Nia knelt beside him, her white chef's coat soon stained crimson. What? She leaned closer. Evidence. Inside jacket. They're dirty. His voice was barely audible. They'll kill me. Denton's radio crackled with backup requests. 2 more patrol cars would arrive in minutes. Nia made her decision in an instant. She hooked her arms under the biker's shoulders and began dragging him toward her kitchen door. 200 pounds of dead weight. Impossible task. Stop right there, Denton shouted, advancing. The biker's eyes widened in panic. Blood bubbled from his lips. His hand clutched a small object he'd pulled from his jacket, a flash drive dangling from a chain. Sweet Comfort Diner had been more bitter than sweet these past months. Nia locked the kitchen door behind her, heart hammering against her ribs as police flashlights swept across the front windows. The injured biker lay unconscious on her storeroom floor, breathing shallow. What have I done? She whispered, clutching the flash drive he'd pressed into her palm before passing out. Outside, car doors slammed. Voices shouted orders. Sweet Comfort was her legacy, her prison, her everything. The last piece of family history still standing in a neighborhood that had pushed out everyone who looked like her. 20 years of dawn to midnight shifts, of fighting gentrification with grits and gravy. Now she'd risked it all for a stranger. A pounding at the front door. Nia slipped the drive into her bra, grabbed a mop, and walked calmly to answer it. Officers, she nodded, opening the door just wide enough to show her cleaning. Lost a customer because of your visit earlier. Had to close early. Denton pushed past her, eyes scanning the empty diner. Where is he? Where's who? Nia continued mopping, forcing her hands not to tremble. The biker. He was right outside. Blood trail leads to your door. Haven't seen anyone. She shrugged. But I was busy cleaning up the mess your partner made throwing my grandmother's china. The second officer circled the counter, peering toward the kitchen. Mind if we look around? Without a warrant? Yes, I mind. Naya set the mop aside and crossed her arms. This is private property. A property you won't own by next week, Denton sneered. We heard First National's calling your loan. 3 months behind, right? He tapped his nightstick against a framed photo of Grandma Essie on opening day, 1962. Shame when family traditions die. Gentrification had been strangling sweet comfort for years. The artisanal coffee shop across the street, the yoga studio next door, the astronomical property taxes. One by one, the families who'd been her regulars for decades were priced out, replaced by tech workers who wanted avocado toast, not her grandmother's buttermilk biscuits. You have no right, Naya began. Ma'am, a dangerous fugitive is missing, the partner interrupted. Refusing to cooperate with police is obstruction of justice. Denton's radio crackled. He stepped outside to answer it. Listen, his partner lowered his voice. Denton has a thing about this neighborhood. His father-in-law's the developer behind those new condos going up. They've been trying to buy this block for years. Naya's stomach tightened. The pieces clicked. The surprise health inspections, the parking tickets for customers, the constant police presence driving away business. They wanted her to fail. Denton returned, scowling. We'll be back with a warrant. Don't go anywhere. The bell jangled as they left. Naya locked the door, flipped the sign to closed, and slumped against the counter. The vintage record player, her one extravagance, purchased with her first profitable year, sat silent in the corner. Usually, Billie Holiday or Nina Simone kept her company during closing. Tonight, she couldn't risk the noise. The bank's final notice glared from beside the register. 72 hours to cure default or foreclosure proceedings will commence. 3 days to come up with $27,500. The storeroom door creaked. The biker stood swaying in the doorway, one hand pressed to his bloodied side, the other braced against the frame. Why? His voice was gravel and smoke. Why'd you help me? Naya considered the question. Not because it was right, not because she was brave, but because she'd watched too many people disappear in the back of police cars in this neighborhood. Because around here, the uniform doesn't always mean protection. She wet a clean towel. Let me see that wound. They'll come back. He winced as she pressed the towel to his side. I'm putting you in danger. I was already in danger. Naya nodded toward the bank notice. Just a different kind. Name's Axel, he said, studying her face. And whatever you think about bikers, whatever you've heard about Hell's Angels. He pulled his leather vest aside to reveal a badge clipped inside. I'm actually undercover DEA. DEA? Nia stepped back, the bloody towel clutched in her fist. You expect me to believe that? Axel slumped against the doorframe, his weathered face pale beneath the grime and dried blood. Believe what you want. But that flash drive you're holding has 18 months of evidence on Denton and his crew. They've been running protection for a synthetic opioid ring, using seizure laws to grab properties in targeted neighborhoods. And you just happened to crash right outside my diner? Naya's eyes narrowed with suspicion. No accident. Axel grimaced, sliding down to sit on the floor. Been watching them circle your place for weeks. You were next on their list. I was trying to get evidence to my handler when they spotted me. Outside, another police cruiser rolled past, spotlights sweeping across the diner's windows. Naya crouched below counter level, pulling Axel down with her. They'll be back with a warrant. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Real or manufactured? Then we need to move. Axel tried to stand, then fell back with a muffled curse. Or at least, this does. He pointed to the flash drive. I'm not leaving my diner. Nia's jaw set firm. This is all I have left of my family. Lady, if those cops find me here, you won't have a diner or your freedom. Axel reached inside his boot and pulled out a burner phone. One call and I can have people here who'll help. People Denton can't touch. More undercover agents? Axel's laugh turned into a pained cough. Not exactly. Real Hell's Angels. I've been embedded with them so long they're like family now. Complicated, dangerous family, but they protect their own. And why would they protect me? Nia asked. Because I'll ask them too. He held out the phone. Your call. The minutes ticked by. Nia paced between the windows, watching for returning patrol cars while Axel made his cryptic call from the kitchen. Dawn wasn't far off. Thursday morning delivery day. Her produce supplier would arrive by 6. They're sending someone, Axel said, shuffling back into the dining area. But it'll be a few hours. Your bandage work is holding, by the way. Not your first time patching someone up. I raised a son on my own in this neighborhood, Nia replied, expression grim. You learn things. Where is he now? Medical school. Howard University pride softened her face momentarily. First doctor in our family. If I can just keep this place going until he graduates. The mention of her son, Jamal, brought the familiar ache. All those years of scraping by, working double shifts, making sure he had everything he needed for school. The mortgage on her tiny house refinanced twice to pay for his pre-med courses. Now, with only months until his graduation, she might lose everything. Your son doesn't help with the diner? Axel asked. He offered to quit school, come back when things got bad. Nia shook her head. That's exactly what I've worked all these years to prevent. His future is more important than this building. A sharp knock at the back door made them both freeze. Nia grabbed a cast-iron skillet from the stove. Delivery for Sweet Comfort, called a familiar voice. It's just me, Marcus. Nia exhaled, setting the skillet down. My supplier, she explained to Axel, who had pressed himself against the wall out of sight. She opened the door to her longtime produce vendor, a heavy-set man with salt and pepper dreadlocks tied back in a neat bundle. Early today, she said, trying to sound normal as she signed his electronic clipboard. Thought you might need these first thing. Marcus hefted a crate of fresh strawberries. Heard you're doing a special brunch? Some group called to reserve the whole place for tomorrow morning. Nia blinked. What group? Don't know. Someone called it in last night, paid in advance. Said they'd be about 20 people. Marcus shrugged. Sounded like good news to me. Axel raised an eyebrow from his hiding spot, but remained silent. After Marcus left, Nia turned to her unexpected guest. Your friends? Smart move, Axel nodded. They'll blend in better as customers. Nia laughed bitterly. 20 bikers will blend in at my diner? This neighborhood clutches pearls when someone plays hip-hop too loud. You'd be surprised how many Hell's Angels are accountants and lawyers Monday through Friday. Axel attempted a smile, then winced. But first, we need to get through today. Those cops will be back, warrant in hand. As if summoned by his words, the phone rang. Nia answered cautiously. Sweet Comfort Diner. Miss Coleman? This is Health Inspector Reeves. We've received a complaint about possible food safety violations at your establishment. I'll be conducting an emergency inspection in 1 hour. The line went dead before she could respond. Nia slammed the receiver down. Reeves, she spat. Denton's brother-in-law. Failed my place 3 times this year on imaginary violations. They're closing the net, Axel said grimly. The health department, the police, the bank, all working together. I can't hide you through a health inspection. They check everything, especially the storeroom. Then I need to leave. Axel pushed himself up, swaying slightly. Is there a back way out? Alley access? There's a service corridor that connects to the loading dock for the whole building, but you're in no shape to run. Nia's mind raced. The next hour was a blur of activity. She helped Axel into his son's old clothes jeans and a Howard University sweatshirt to replace his bloodied biker gear. They hid his leather vest and the flash drive inside a secret compartment beneath the antique record player, a smuggling spot her grandmother had used during Prohibition, now repurposed for Nia's emergency cache. "If anything happens to me," Axel said, scribbling on a napkin, "call this number. Tell them Artemis Protocol. They'll know what to do." The sound of a vehicle pulling up outside made them both tense. Through the blinds, Nia spotted not a health department car, but a police cruiser. Officer Denton stepped out, followed by a man in a suit carrying a briefcase. "Health inspector and his police escort," Nia muttered. "Right on time." "I need to go." Axel headed for the back corridor. "Wait." Nia grabbed a bag, quickly filling it with biscuits and her grandmother's special honey-cured ham. "You'll need strength." Axel stared at her, a question in his eyes. "Why are you still helping me?" "Because they've taken enough from this community." She pressed the food into his hands. "And I'm tired of watching it happen." The front door rattled as someone tried the handle, then pounded on the glass. Nia squeezed Axel's arm once, then pushed him toward the exit. "Go." After securing the back door, Nia smoothed her apron, straightened her shoulders, and went to face her visitors. "Miss Coleman." The health inspector sniffed as he entered, Denton looming behind him. "I understand you had an incident last night. Blood on your premises." "Just a coffee spill." Nia's voice was steady. "Officers Denton and Parker can be clumsy with other people's property." Denton's eyes hardened. "We have reason to believe you're harboring a fugitive, Ms. Coleman. A dangerous one." "Search warrant?" Nia held out her hand. The inspector intervened. "My inspection takes priority, public health concerns." For the next hour, Reeves meticulously examined every inch of her diner, swabbing surfaces, checking temperatures, flipping through her logs. Denton shadowed him, eyes constantly scanning for signs of Axel. "Your freezer's running 2 degrees above regulation," Reeves announced with grim satisfaction. "And there's dust on these upper shelves." "Potential contamination risk." "Those shelves are decorative, not food storage," Nia protested. "And I'll need to see your storeroom now," Reeves continued, ignoring her. The storeroom inspection revealed nothing suspicious, but Reeves wasn't finished. "Your grease traps haven't been professionally cleaned in 90 days. That's a critical violation." "I cleaned them myself last week," Nia argued. "The service is scheduled for next Monday." "Self-cleaning doesn't meet code." Reeves made a show of writing in his notepad. "I'm issuing an immediate suspension of your food service license pending correction of these violations." Denton smirked as Reeves handed over the official notice. "Looks like you'll be closed for a while. Shame about all that food going to waste." As they headed for the door, Reeves paused. "Oh, and the reinspection fee is $1,500, cash or certified check only." Another strike, another obstacle, another expense she couldn't afford. Nia waited until their car pulled away before slumping into a booth, the suspension notice crumpled in her fist. The phone rang again. This time, it was her banker. "Ms. Coleman, this is Gerald Thompson from First National. I'm calling about your outstanding loan balance." She already knew what he would say. The bank was accelerating her loan due to business interruption concerns. The full amount would be due tomorrow, not in 72 hours as the notice had stated. Outside, a tow truck pulled up, hooking onto her ancient Buick parked at the curb, her only transportation. "Unpaid parking tickets," the driver explained when she ran out to protest. Orders to impound came straight from Traffic Division. By noon, Nia sat alone in her empty, officially closed diner, staring at the health department closure notice plastered on her front window. Her car was gone. Her bank account was frozen, pending investigation of suspicious activity. Even her phone had been disconnected for unpaid service fees she was certain she'd paid. The systematic dismantling of her life was happening in real time, orchestrated by people with badges and briefcases. And somewhere out there, a wounded DEA agent carried the only evidence that might save her diner if he hadn't been recaptured or killed. The afternoon shadows lengthened across Sweet Comfort's empty tables. Nia sat in her grandmother's old rocking chair behind the counter, the one she'd used to shell peas while telling stories about the civil rights movement. The antique record player beside her remained silent, too risky to play music now, with the flash drive hidden inside. 3 generations of Coleman women had kept this place alive through riots, recessions, and redlining. Now it would die on her watch. A soft tapping at the back door pulled her from her thoughts. Nia approached cautiously, dish towel twisted between her fingers. Through the peephole, she saw a young woman in a delivery uniform holding a package. "Sweet Comfort?" the courier asked when Nia cracked the door. "We're closed." Nia pointed to the health department notice. "Indefinitely." "This isn't food delivery." The woman held out an envelope. "Personal delivery for Nia Coleman." Signature required. Nia signed, suspicious. Inside the envelope was a burner phone with a single text message. "Turn it on at 8 p.m. One-time use. Delete after." Axel had survived, at least long enough to send this. The realization brought unexpected relief. Nia spent the next hours taking inventory of what remained. The ancient cash register held $342.63. Her personal checking account, now frozen, had contained barely $1,200. The emergency cash hidden beneath the record player totaled $4,738, her son's next tuition installment, nowhere near enough to save the diner. As she counted, she found herself speaking aloud to Grandma Essie's photo. "What would you do, Grandma?" "You face down men with fire hoses. All I've got is a corrupt cop and a banker." The photo offered no answers, but remembering her grandmother's strength steadied her. Essie Coleman hadn't built this place by surrendering to bullies. At precisely 8 p.m., Nia switched on the burner phone. It rang immediately. "You helped me when you had every reason not to." Axel's voice was stronger than when she'd last heard it. "Now I'm returning the favor. My people are coming. 20 of them for breakfast tomorrow, just like your supplier mentioned." "The diner's been shut down," Nia said. "Health code violations." "Perfect cover. Nobody expects activity in a closed business. Listen carefully. Tomorrow morning, people will arrive. Let them in through the back. They'll handle security while we copy the evidence. By noon, it'll be in federal hands." "And how does that help me save my diner?" Nia asked, a bitter edge to her voice. "In case you haven't noticed, I'm being systematically destroyed. My business is closed, my account's frozen, even my car's been towed. Trust me, Nia." His voice softened. "You showed me kindness when I was bleeding out on your floor. You risked everything for a stranger. That means something to me and to the people I ride with." Nia thought of her son, of the sacrifices she'd made to give him opportunities she never had. Of all the neighborhood kids she'd fed when their parents worked late. Of the elders who came not just for food, but for community when gentrification had stolen everything else familiar. "My grandmother used to say, 'The hand that gives is never empty for long.'" She sighed. "But sometimes it stays empty just long enough to lose everything." "Not this time," Axel promised. "Just be ready." The line went dead. Alone again, Nia made her decision. She would cook one last meal in Sweet Comfort, whether the health department approved or not. She began pulling ingredients: fresh strawberries from Marcus, her grandmother's secret recipe flour mix, aged maple syrup she'd splurged on last month. The third luxury item in her diner, after the record player and her grandmother's imported chef's knives from Japan, a set of hand-forged blades passed down through 3 generations of Coleman women. As she worked, Nia felt a familiar peace settle over her. The rhythms of cooking had always been her meditation, her prayer, her resistance. Every biscuit rolled, every gravy stirred was an act of cultural preservation. By midnight, she had prepared everything possible for the morning service. Biscuit dough rested in the refrigerator. Bacon was pre-cooked. Her grandmother's special honey butter compound sat cooling. Egg wash was mixed and waiting. Exhausted, Nia curled up in the rocking chair, her grandmother's quilt pulled tight around her shoulders. Tomorrow would bring either salvation or final defeat. Either way, she would face it having done what generations of Coleman women had always done, fed people with dignity, no matter the cost. The sound of a motorcycle engine woke her just before dawn. Then another, and another. Nia peeked through the blinds. 3 riders sat on their bikes across the street, faces hidden behind helmets, leather cuts bearing the Hells Angels insignia clearly visible even in the dim light. They weren't trying to hide their presence. A deliberate warning to anyone watching. The burner phone vibrated with a text. "Open back door. Now." Nia slipped through the kitchen to the service entrance. A woman stood there, petite, silver-streaked hair in a tight braid, leather vest adorned with patches. Despite her size, she radiated unmistakable authority. "I'm Razor," she said simply. "Axel sent me ahead. The others are coming." Her eyes, sharp as flint, scanned Nia's face. "You saved one of ours. That puts you under our protection now." "I don't need," Nia began. "Yeah, you do." Razor stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "Axel told us everything. You're up against a corrupt system that wants your property. We know how that works. Been fighting that fight ourselves for decades." From her vest, Razor pulled a folded paper. "This came from our club's lawyer last night. Thought you might want to see it before the others arrive." Nia unfolded the document. It was a letter from the State Banking Commission, opening an investigation into First National Bank's lending practices, specifically citing potential discrimination in commercial foreclosures in historically black neighborhoods. "How did you—" "Our club has members everywhere," Razor said with a thin smile. "Including a state banking regulator whose daughter we helped get out of a human trafficking situation last year. He owed us a favor." The morning sun filtered through the blinds as Nia finished setting up the kitchen with Razor's help. Outside, the rumble of motorcycles grew steadily, a bass note beneath the neighborhood's usual morning sounds. "That'll be the first wave," Razor said, checking her phone. 6 riders coming in through the service alley. Axel's with the second group." "I still don't understand why you're all doing this," Nia said, sliding fresh biscuits into the oven. "One undercover agent I can understand, but an entire motorcycle club?" Razor's weathered face softened slightly. 18 months Axel's been with us. Saved my nephew from an overdose. Pulled our president's grandson out of a burning car. Never asked for anything in return." She gestured around the diner. "Until now. For you." The back door opened, and 6 leather-clad figures filed in silently. Among them was a slender man in wire-rimmed glasses carrying a laptop bag. "This is Tech," Razor introduced him. "Best digital forensics guy in 3 states. Former NSA before he found a better family with us." Tech nodded politely to Nia, his demeanor more professor than biker. "Ma'am, I understand you have something for me to analyze?" Nia hesitated, then led him to the vintage record player. She carefully opened the hidden compartment and retrieved the flash drive. "Denton and his crew will be watching the place," she warned. "They know something's here." "That's why we have lookouts posted." Tech booted up his laptop. "And why the rest of our chapter is arriving in staggered groups. To anyone watching, it'll look like we're just defying the closure notice to get breakfast." As Tech worked, Nia returned to the kitchen. The ritual of cooking centered her, even now. Biscuits golden and fragrant, gravy silky smooth, coffee strong and hot. She worked alongside Razor, who proved surprisingly skilled with a knife, dicing potatoes for hash with practiced precision. "Used to cook for the whole club on Sundays," Razor explained, noticing Naya's expression. "Before I became sergeant at arms." Another group arrived. 4 more bikers, including a woman in her 60s with legal documents tucked under her arm. "That's Judge," Razor whispered. "Retired family court justice. Now she handles legal strategy for the club." Judge approached Naya, hand extended. "Your establishment has quite a reputation, Miss Coleman. My clerk used to drive 30 minutes for your sweet potato pie." Retired judges riding with Hell's Angels. Nia couldn't keep the surprise from her voice. "Life takes unexpected turns," Judge smiled. "Kind of like your day is about to." From the front of the diner came a sharp knock. Through the blinds, Nia could see a police cruiser parked outside. Officer Denton and his partner, accompanied by a man in an expensive suit. "Right on schedule," Tech muttered, still working on his laptop. "That'll be the banker." "I need to answer," Naya said, wiping her hands on her apron. Razor nodded to 2 of the largest bikers, who positioned themselves out of sight on either side of the entrance. Judge quickly gathered the legal papers, straightening her leather vest. "Let me do the talking," she said. Naya unlocked the front door, conscious of the surreal scene behind her. 9 Hell's Angels calmly drinking coffee in her closed diner, the smell of fresh biscuits wafting through the air. "Ms. Coleman," Denton began, "you're in violation of a health department closure." He stopped abruptly, finally registering the occupied tables. The banker stepped forward, brandishing papers. "I'm Gerald Thompson from First National. These are foreclosure documents requiring your immediate—" "Gerald Thompson?" Judge stepped up beside Nia. "How interesting. I was just reviewing some banking commission complaints about your predatory lending practices." Thompson's face paled. "Who are you?" Judge handed him a business card. "Catherine Woodward, attorney at law. I represent Miss Coleman now." "And I," came a new voice from behind them, "represent the federal government." Axel walked through the front door, cleaned up and dressed in a crisp suit. His DEA badge gleamed on his belt. Behind him stood 4 more agents in tactical gear. "Agent Alex Harmon, Drug Enforcement Administration," he introduced himself formally. "Officer Denton, Mr. Thompson, I believe you've been looking for me." The mid-morning sunlight illuminated the stunned faces of Denton and Thompson. Nia felt a wave of vindication wash over her as Axel continued. "We've been investigating a multi-agency corruption case involving property seizures, banking fraud, and narcotics distribution in this neighborhood for nearly 2 years." He turned to Nia with a hint of a smile. "What we lacked was a safe location to compile our evidence and witnesses. Ms. Coleman kindly provided that." "This is absurd," Denton sputtered. "You can't just—" "Actually, we can," Axel interrupted, handing Denton a federal warrant. "This authorizes us to seize all documentation related to First National Bank's foreclosure activities in this district, as well as all electronic communications from the precinct regarding property enforcement actions over the past 3 years." Naya watched in amazement as her tormentors' faces crumbled. Then Tech called from the back, his voice urgent. "Boss, you need to see this." "It's worse than we thought." The next hours passed in a blur. DEA agents swarmed the diner, converting it into a temporary command center. Denton and Thompson were taken away for questioning. Laptops hummed, phones rang. Through it all, Hell's Angels and federal agents moved around each other in an uneasy alliance, united only by their connection to Axel. Nia found herself sitting in a back booth, nursing a cold cup of coffee as Tech and 3 DEA analysts huddled over the flash drive's contents. "It's a complete operation," she overheard Tech explaining. "They targeted specific properties along the light rail expansion route, used the police to find or plant drug violations, seized the properties under civil asset forfeiture, then the bank swooped in to buy at auction for pennies on the dollar." Axel slid into the booth across from her, his expression grim. You should hear this too, Nia. Tech turned his laptop around. Sweet Comfort was scheduled for seizure 3 days from now. They had a fake drug bust planned, planted evidence, paid informants, the works. Nia's stomach clenched. So it's over? They're caught? The silence that followed was answer enough. Not exactly, Axel finally said. Denton and Thompson are small players. The operation is bigger than we thought. The flash drive has evidence, but most of it is circumstantial. We need the main server at First National to get the complete financial records. And the judge who's been signing these warrants, Tech added. District Judge Whitmore. His digital signature is all over these documents. The name hit Nia like a physical blow. Carlton Whitmore? He's been coming to this diner for 20 years. My grandmother catered his first judicial investiture. Money changes loyalties, Razor said from the next booth. He's on the hook for over $2 million in development kickbacks, according to these files. Axel's phone rang. As he answered, his face darkened further. When he hung up, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. That was my director, he said flatly. Judge Whitmore just signed emergency orders freezing all our evidence, citing ongoing local investigation privileges. He's also issued bench warrants for my arrest on charges of impersonating a federal officer. But you are a federal officer, Nia protested. Whitmore claims my credentials are fraudulent. He's alleging I stole a DEA identity. Axel ran a hand through his hair. My director is fighting it, but jurisdictional battles take time we don't have. Local marshals are already on their way here. The Hells Angels exchanged glances. Razor stood. We can get you out. Back roads, safe houses. No. Axel shook his head. If I run, everything we've built falls apart. We need a legal win, not a tactical retreat. Outside, sirens approached. One of the lookouts burst in. 3 patrol cars and a tactical unit 2 blocks away. They've got the street blocked at both ends. The DEA agents began hurriedly packing equipment. We've got to move this operation, the lead analyst said. If they seize our hardware here, we lose everything. What about the diner? Nia asked, rising from the booth. What about my business? Axel couldn't meet her eyes. I'm sorry, Nia. We've stirred up a hornet's nest without enough protection. Once we're gone, they'll come after you even harder. The best thing might be to accept Thompson's payoff offer and walk away. Start fresh, somewhere else. Walk away. The words felt like ashes in her mouth. From my family legacy? From my community? Sometimes surviving is the victory, he said quietly. You helped me survive. Let me return the favor. From his pocket, he withdrew an envelope. Emergency DEA witness relocation funds, $20,000. It's not much, but it's enough to start over. Nia stared at the envelope, then at the chaos around her. Her beloved diner transformed into a retreating battlefield. All because she'd shown kindness to a stranger in need. All because she'd dared to stand against a corrupt system. The agents finished packing, making quick apologies as they slipped out the back. Most of the Hells Angels followed, creating a diversion on side streets to cover the agents' escape. Soon, only Axel, Razor, and Tech remained. We need to go, Tech urged, laptop under his arm. Marshals will have a digital tracking warrant. Staying here puts the evidence at risk. Axel placed the envelope on the table. Come with us, Nia. It's not safe for you anymore. Outside, the tactical unit had arrived. Through the blinds, Nia could see officers in riot gear taking positions. A bullhorn crackled to life. This is the U.S. Marshals Service. The building is surrounded. All occupants must exit with hands visible. A tear slipped down Nia's cheek as she looked around at her grandmother's diner, possibly for the last time. The vintage record player, the signed photo of Ella Fitzgerald who'd once stopped in for pie, the wall of community photos spanning 6 decades. Go, she told Axel. Get that evidence somewhere safe. What about you? Concern etched his features. Naya straightened her shoulders, channeling Grandma Essie's spirit. This is my home. My legacy. If they want it, they'll have to take it from me directly. They will, Razor warned, and they'll enjoy doing it. The bullhorn blared again. 2 minutes to surrender peacefully. Please, Naya. Axel pushed the envelope toward her again. Don't sacrifice yourself. She placed her hand over his but didn't take the money. Sometimes sacrifice is the only language power understands. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Get that evidence out. Make it count. The back door closed behind them as the marshal's countdown reached 0. Alone in her diner, Nia Coleman braced herself as the front door splintered open. The tactical team poured into sweet comfort, weapons raised, shouting contradictory commands. Nia stood behind the counter, hands visible, her grandmother's voice in her head. Don't you give them the satisfaction of your fear. On the ground! Now! An officer in full tactical gear approached, zip ties ready. I'm unarmed in my own business establishment, Nia said calmly. I'll cooperate, but I'm not lying on my floor. A man in an expensive suit pushed through the officers. Assistant District Attorney Philip Reynolds. She recognized him from local news. Behind him came Judge Whitmore himself, his familiar face now cold and unrecognizable. Ms. Coleman, Reynolds began, you're being detained for questioning regarding harboring a fugitive, obstruction of justice, and interfering with federal officers. Quite a performance, Nia, Judge Whitmore added, glancing around the diner with distaste. I expected better from Essie's granddaughter. And my grandmother expected better from the man whose campaigns she supported, Nia replied evenly. Does the bribery pay better than public service, Judge? Whitmore's face hardened. Search the premises. Find the DEA imposter and his evidence. Ms. Coleman can contemplate her situation from a cell. As officers zip-tied her wrists, Nia kept her expression neutral. Let them search. Axel and the evidence were long gone. Sir, called an officer from the kitchen, you should see this. Reynolds and Whitmore followed the voice. Moments later, Reynolds emerged, holding a plastic evidence bag containing a flash drive. Found it inside a coffee can in the freezer, he announced smugly. Apparently our federal friends left in too much of a hurry. Ice formed in Nia's stomach. A decoy? Or had Axel actually failed to get the real evidence out? Take her downtown, Whitmore ordered. And make sure the health department condemns this building by sunset. I want demolition permits expedited. As they led her toward the door, the sound of motorcycles filled the air, distant at first, then growing louder. Through the windows, Nia saw them coming. Not 10 or 20 bikes, but hundreds, filling the street from curb to curb. Hell's Angels in the lead, but behind them rode members of every motorcycle club in the region. Leather cuts of all colors and patches, a sea of chrome and steel. What the hell? Reynolds pressed his face to the window. The riders stopped in perfect formation, engines idling. From the lead bike, Razor dismounted, removing her helmet. Behind her came Axel, still in his DEA suit, flanked by Tech and a dozen other angels. And behind them, vans with network news logos, camera crews spilling out, satellite dishes extending. Sir, one of the tactical officers said nervously, we've got media, lots of media. Judge Whitmore's complexion turned ashen. Keep her inside. Nobody talks to the press. Too late. Outside, Axel approached the news crews, badge held high. Beside him walked a distinguished older man in a suit. Nia recognized him from news coverage of federal drug busts. That's DEA Director Phillips, whispered one of the marshals. What's he doing here? Reynolds and Whitmore exchanged panicked glances. The judge grabbed the evidence bag with the flash drive. "We need to leave. Now. Use the back door." "Going somewhere, Carlton?" The voice came from the kitchen. Judge Catherine Woodward. The Hells Angel called, Judge emerged, followed by 4 people in FBI windbreakers. "Special Agent Lawrence, FBI Public Corruption Task Force," the lead agent introduced herself. "Judge Whitmore, Mr. Reynolds, we have warrants for your arrests on charges of racketeering, bribery, evidence tampering, and civil rights violations." Whitmore sputtered, "This is absurd. I have immunity." "No judge has immunity for criminal conspiracy," Judge Woodward said coldly, "especially when they're stupid enough to detail the entire operation in emails. Your IT director has been cooperating with the FBI for months." Reynolds lunged for the back door, only to find 2 massive Hells Angels blocking his path. "The flash drive you're holding, Judge Whitmore," Agent Lawrence continued, "is actually empty. The real evidence was never here." Nia's confusion must have shown on her face, because Judge Woodward smiled as she approached to remove the zip ties. "Your record player, Miss Coleman. The one with the secret compartment? It contained more than just a flash drive. Outside, the crowd had swelled. Residents from the neighborhood gathered behind police barricades, watching the spectacle unfold. Local business owners Nia had known for decades. Families who'd been coming to Sweet Comfort for generations. As the FBI led Whitmore and Reynolds out in handcuffs, a cheer erupted from the crowd. Motorcycle engines revved in approval. Axel re-entered the diner, DEA Director Phillips beside him. "Ms. Coleman," the director said, extending his hand, "your assistance to Agent Harmon was instrumental in breaking this case. On behalf of the Department of Justice, I thank you." "Agent Harmon?" Nia looked at Axel questioningly. "Alex Harmon," he clarified with a small smile. "Axel's just my undercover name. I'm sorry for the deception." Director Phillips continued, "What you uncovered goes far beyond one corrupt judge. This operation targeted minority-owned businesses in 7 cities, using the same playbook-manufactured health violations, police harassment, predatory banking. The grand twist," Agent Lawrence added, "was discovering that First National's regional vice president is Judge Whitmore's brother-in-law. They've been running this scheme for years, selling seized properties to shell companies they control." Axel, or rather, Agent Harmon, stepped closer to Nia. "There's something else you should know. That secret compartment in your record player? Your grandmother installed a microphone system during the civil rights era. It recorded every conversation in the main dining area." "What?" Nia stared in disbelief. "Apparently, Sweet Comfort was a meeting place for movement leaders," he explained. "The microphone was connected to a reel-to-reel tape system to document threats and plans. When your grandmother upgraded to the record player, she maintained the compartment but disconnected the recording device." "Until 3 days ago," Tech interjected, joining them, "when I reconnected it with modern equipment. Every word Whitmore and Reynolds said in here today is recorded, including their plans to fabricate evidence against you." Director Phillips nodded gravely. "The corruption went all the way to the State Banking Commission. But with today's evidence, we can finally shut it down completely." Through the windows, Nia could see the crowd growing, neighbors holding impromptu signs, "Save Sweet Comfort," and "Justice for NIA." "But why?" she asked, gesturing to the hundreds of bikers outside. "Why all this for my dinner?" Razor stepped forward. "Because you fed our brother when he was hungry. Sheltered him when he was in danger." Her weathered face softened. "And because you remind me of my mother. She lost her restaurant in Tulsa back in '68. Nobody stood up for her then. We're standing up for you now." The aftermath unfolded like a dream. FBI agents combed through Sweet Comfort, now designated as a key evidence site in a federal investigation. News crews interviewed neighborhood residents about the pattern of harassment and targeted enforcement. Nia found herself seated at her own counter, drinking tea made by a Hell's Angel named Tiny who'd taken over her kitchen. Director Phillips sat across from her, sliding a document across the counter. "This is a formal letter from the Justice Department clearing your business of all health violations and affirming that they were part of a criminal conspiracy. The actual health department, the honest officials, will be here tomorrow to formally reinstate your permits." "And the bank?" Nia asked, the foreclosure still hanging over her head. "First National's actions were part of the RICO case we're building," Agent Lawrence explained. "The Federal Banking Commission has already frozen their foreclosure activities pending investigation. Your loan has been transferred to oversight by the FDIC. Judge Woodward joined them, legal papers in hand. I've filed emergency injunctions preventing any action against your property for 120 days. By then, the federal case will be well underway, and your position will be secure." Nia stared at the documents, disbelief warring with cautious hope. "So I can reopen?" "Tomorrow, if you want," Director Phillips confirmed. "But there's more." He nodded toward the window. Outside, a flatbed truck was delivering Nia's car, freshly washed and detailed. Behind it, a van from the City Utilities Department was reinstating her services. "The Corruption Task Force is expediting remediation for all victims," Agent Lawrence said. "Your accounts will be unfrozen by close of business today." Axel Agent Harmon approached with Tech beside him. "There's something else you should see." Tech opened his laptop, turning the screen toward Nia. "The conspiracy targeted 28 minority-owned businesses in this neighborhood over the past 5 years. 18 have already been demolished or repurposed." The screen showed a map of the area with Sweet Comfort at its center. Red dots indicated lost businesses. Yellow showed those at risk. "We found evidence that First National created a $40 million victim compensation fund last year," Tech continued. "Insurance against getting caught. They called it community reinvestment in their internal documents, but it was really hush money they never expected to pay." "The court has frozen those assets," Judge Woodward added. "As the primary whistleblower, you'll be entitled to a significant percentage." Nia shook her head, overwhelmed. "I don't need millions. I just need my dinner." "Your diner is safe," Axel assured her. "But the money could help others who weren't as fortunate." Outside, the crowd had transformed into an impromptu block party. Neighbors brought out folding chairs. Children played between parked motorcycles, fascinated by the chrome and leather. The local news was calling it the Sweet Comfort Coalition, bikers and residents united against corruption. Razor approached, phone in hand. "There's someone who wants to talk to you." Nia took the phone, confused until she heard the voice. "Mom? What's happening there? Are you okay?" Her son Jamal's worried voice filled her ear. "I'm fine, baby." Better than fine. Tears sprang to her eyes. "How did you—" "Your biker friend sent a car to my dorm this morning, said you might need me." His voice cracked slightly. "They're flying me home tonight." First class. The weight of the past days, the fear, the despair, the desperate stand finally broke through. Nia Coleman, who hadn't cried when the foreclosure notice came, who hadn't broken when officers invaded her diner, wept openly now. The hand that gives is never empty for long. Her grandmother's words had proven true in ways she could never have imagined. As evening fell, Sweet Comfort glowed with renewed purpose. Nia moved through the crowd, accepting hugs from neighbors, handshakes from bikers, business cards from reporters wanting her story. Returning to the counter, she found a single envelope beside her grandmother's photo. Inside was a check for $25,000 and a note in Axel's handwriting. For repairs and reopening. No strings, just repaying kindness with kindness. 6 months later, Sweet Comfort Diner hummed with life. The vintage record player spun Ella Fitzgerald, while morning sunlight streamed through windows now adorned with community award plaques. The Best Biscuits in the City banner hung proudly beside a framed newspaper headline, Justice served at local diner. Nia wiped down the counter, pausing to adjust her grandmother's photo, now joined by a snapshot of herself surrounded by leather-clad bikers at the grand reopening. Every Sunday morning, like clockwork, at least a dozen Hell's Angels rolled up for what they dubbed family breakfast. Today was no different. The bell jingled as Razor entered, followed by Tech and several others. They settled into their usual booth just as Jamal emerged from the kitchen, chef's coat crisp over his Howard Medical School t-shirt. "The doctor's specials are ready," he announced, delivering plates piled high with biscuits and gravy. His weekend shifts at Sweet Comfort had become part of his routine, clinical practice in community health, he called it with a wink. At the counter, Nia served coffee to a young couple who'd recently opened a bookstore where an abandoned property once stood. They were among 5 new minority-owned businesses in the neighborhood, all beneficiaries of the First National Settlement Fund that Nia had helped establish. Judge Whitmore and his conspirators had taken plea deals, trading information for reduced sentences. Their testimony had exposed similar schemes in cities across the country, triggering investigations and reforms. Nia glanced at the community board near the entrance, where stories of everyday kindness were posted. Neighborhood children helping elders, strangers paying forward meals, small gestures with ripple effects. It's not the size of the kindness that matters, but the courage to offer it when everything tells you not to. Sweet Comfort had become more than a diner. It was a testament to what happens when people stand together against injustice, when strangers become allies, when one act of compassion sparks a movement. Did this story of courage and redemption move you? For more powerful narratives that celebrate triumph over injustice, like and subscribe to Beat Stories. Every week we bring you real, raw tales of ordinary heroes standing against extraordinary odds. Don't miss our next episode. Hit that subscribe button now.